Hello, chess friends. This is International Master Valeri Lilov, and welcome to today's lecture on YouTube. I have to apologize for last week's, just as well as today. I had some technical problems, but fortunately, they're all resolved, and we could start with our lecture. What I'd like to talk about today is really an important topic, and it's all about analyzing, and more importantly, avoiding typical mistakes. How do you do that? Is a key question. Everybody wants to know how to avoid typical mistakes. Everybody wants to be aware of that. So I'm going to try to give you a few suggestions on how you can achieve this. So let's begin first by, working out the key question. What is a mistake? Now, this may sound a bit strange when I'm saying it, but the truth is that a mistake, there are actually different sorts of mistakes. The first one that everybody knows is the typical, okay, I blundered. Everybody knows what that kind of a mistake is. Blundering is about just throwing a piece away or missing a mistake, messing up. The key thing you want to know is that blunders can be avoided, not just by exercising and training well so that you could get better, but there are different things that will help you quite a lot. So we go with, I'm going to show you right now a couple of typical blunders and how players could have avoided them. So let's start. Let's imagine that you're playing with the white pieces. So we start the game with e4. Okay, I'm actually going to remove here the dynamic hands in the spine that wouldn't interfere with the board. Black plays c5, knight f3. Then he's got the move of d6, d4, c6. Now everybody knows this type of theory. Everybody is well aware. So that's why, as long as you follow the major lines of the opening, again, I'm not talking about offbeat lines that somebody tells you are perfect. It's like just a major strategic line of thought. You're not really likely going to be wrong. So just make sure you're following up. Now, where a mistake could exist is around a position of this kind, where people play, let's say that black plays b5. So we have a really interesting situation. With his last move, black is apparently intending to open, and he'd like to do this very well. He wants to do the move of b5. He wants to do bishop to b7. He'd like to focus on pressurizing the file, the lines. It feels a little uncomfortable to us, indeed. So what's the best way to go about a position of this kind? The first thing is that people will freak out. I mean, I know it because I've been there, so to speak. It's the move that will come into mind will be like, okay, I've got to figure out right now a little move like, say, maybe pawn to a3, and then after bishop b7, I'll say I have to play f3. I'm okay. As long as I can play it this way, I'll be fine. Is it true? Not really. You see, that's what it seems like. It looks like if we just go this way, all the problems and difficulties are going to be resolved. We're going to have a fair position, easy development, good structure. But that's a mistake. And we start with that idea of what I would call an opening mistake. It's a mistake because it leads to a very passive position. And black is in condition to do many things, including one of them being to play e5 and then actually prepare d5. Maybe not immediately, but, just play like that. In the end, we're just going to end up with a position that's rather passive, really not that good. And then once he plays queen c7, rook d8, everything's great. I mean, it almost looks like we're playing the black pieces. It looks like we're just playing an inferior position of what we were supposed to play. Why? See, this is the key. We go with the biggest question as to why did it have to happen. Going down, back, I want to mention the first thing. The first biggest mistake that most chess players do, not blundering, again, We're going to cover the blunders. These are the most basic mistakes, but let's leave that for later. We're going to start with the opening mistakes, and the opening mistake is that they play passively. This is a very important thing. The majority of the chess players tend to play very passive. Do not play passively. Do not do that. What you need to do, very importantly, is to make sure that your pieces get to have a stronger, like possibility, like that they can advance, they can do different things, but you cannot allow yourselves to be passive. Not in the opening. In the middle game, maybe if necessary. Not in the opening. So what's the best way to go? Develop actively. Even if that active move by itself does not look like it's anything too special, it is going to matter because we're definitely going to be in a good position to follow. So it's a really interesting thing. Now what are we doing in this case? It's actually pretty valuable because we're really able to or capable to get to regroup and situate most of our pieces where they need to be. And so if black plays with something like bishop to the b7, we could continue with a move of, for example, pawn to the f3. We'll get everything under control, and it's it's a very valuable thing. So one of the key things is that we could continue with the move of short castles, queen to the d2, rook to the d1, and so it's perfect. So actually this is one of the keys is that so step by step we're going to develop. Now we could still play a move like f3, but it's not going to come as passively. We could even think about the chance right now to actually play alongside with a move of long side castling, and we could have moves like g4 and h4. It's a perfect resource. So for example, we can continue with the move of h5. We can do the move g5 in this type of position. It's an excellent resource. We have the stability in the middle. We have the opportunity to step forward, and we can think of rook g1. It changes everything. It looks like it doesn't, but it really does. And that's what I need to tell you. See, very important idea. Most chess players are not going to think about it this way. And yet, the big principle, the big key about these positions is, can I make sure that my development stands out more active than the opponent's? It's not even so much about any general activity. It's just about, being well placed. Imagine black would do now move like bishop to the e7, and we are totally all right, as the kind of move that we could do is just going to be long side castling, and then we are going to realize very quickly the possibility of playing h4. Most likely afterwards, in case of knight bd7, we can even do a move of g4, and it's really wonderful. It's a great jump, very important activity to make. See, step by step, we must get not just our pieces, but everything that works. So it's excellent, and this is what is super necessary. Rule number one about these kinds of positions is, let's get the possibilities working. And so, for example, the g4, black has to do rook to the c8. We can even play a move like h5. It's wonderful. So now, for example, a rook e8, g5 could be played, and so it's great. I love the opportunity of playing, like towards the middle, just like that, and playing actively. So what about middle game? Okay, so we could have a lot of different type of mistakes in the middle game too. So it's just, I want to say that because it often appears. Well, let's go with another situation. Let's suppose we're actually playing as black. And what do I mean by that? Well, let's suppose that we're playing with black, e4, and then we go for something like, say, e5, normally. Okay, nothing too special. Play e4, e5, knight f3, knight of the c6. Okay, so it's normal. White will play, let's suppose, a move like this. So what are we going to do in this case? Everybody knows the theory here that all we want to do is to follow a good symmetry. And I love a good symmetry. When it's done properly, it is supposed to work quite well. But what I also want to say, and it's a huge deal, is a really big deal, is that whatever it is that you think about doing, you have to be very much ready to accept the consequences of a move like this. Now, why am I saying that? Well, because it's pretty important. When white plays with the move of bishop pawn to the b4, he goes into a gambit. Now, there exists a possibility for another kind of an opening mistake. The other kind of an opening mistake exists after bishop takes b4, c3, bishop a5. Let's imagine he attacks our center. So what are you going to, if you know what you're going to do, of course you're going to handle it. I'm going to handle it well. But what goes if we don't? If we feel a little confused out there, and if we feel a little bit on the backside. Now that's a really tricky question. If you find yourself in a position like this, the first thing that I would recommend you to do, the very, very first thing, is to keep things simple. Now, is it easy to do that? Can you do that somehow? I wouldn't say so. And here is the reason why I wouldn't say so. Because after white plays alongside the move of, just this type of a little idea, first of all, we have to capture it in case white actually casts a short side in this moment. Then we're just going to play along with knight e7, and actually after the move of knight at the e7, c6 to the d. How do you keep things as simple as possible? How do you do that? I recommend that the best opportunity to achieve this is to play with d5. It is what I call often a break, a breakthrough. But it's actually really pretty beautiful, because the whole idea of it is that in case if white plays with e6 to the d, then we are wonderful. We have that opportunity to step forward, and then after knight takes to the d5 as it is, then we've got the chance to think about, okay, if bishop a3, then maybe a little move of a bishop to the b4. So okay, so like bishop takes to the b4, knight takes to the b4. Now, or maybe just bishop e6. When can you know that things are actually okay in this type of position? See, number one, it's a good idea. Keep things, this is big, actually, keep things stable. So it's a very, very valuable thing. How do you do that? How do you actually keep things as simple as possible? Well, actually, after that move, bishop to the e6, white has no opportunity to advance. He cannot actually create any real threats. He cannot deliver anything that dangerous. So at the moment, or at this point at least, we're actually fairly stable. Everything feels consistent, and no need to worry. See, rule number one about positions like that: keep things as simple as you can. Maybe if white plays with a move like queen to the b3, we could do a move like bishop to the b6. White can't deliver any real threats in this position. Plays bishop to the b5. We can even play with a6. Bishop takes the c, b takes the c, and after that, in case white played with a move knight bd2, maybe you could just play with an f6. So it's really important. Rook e1, king f7. We have a queen to the d7 that we could make very quickly. If your opponent does not have any ability to create a major threat against your position, then you are likely very safe. But it's key that we can then follow up. Maybe queen to the d7, rook to the e8 is an opportunity. We can have a move of knight to the f4, bishop to the d5, queen to g4, and it's going to be wonderful. Step by step, it's a really important thing to do. So, okay, well, this is a good example of how to avoid, major typical mistakes out there. So a little bit of a thing to keep in mind. So like e5, knight f6. Now, let's talk about middle game mistakes. Middle game mistakes are very necessary, and a lot of times people don't know how to avoid them. So I'm going to give you an idea of what are the most common middle game mistakes you could expect. First thing, actually, starting from the beginning, starting from the back, we go with the d4 openings. You will be amazed how often, this is key, how often people get confused about closed openings. Why? What's so mysterious about it? Well, let me show you an example. Here's a very good example of what I would call the most nightmarish system that I've ever seen, the Catalan. It works like this: d4, d5, c4, e6, knight f3, knight f6, g3. Now, should we play bishop e7? White can do bishop g2. He goes into what I would call the Catalan. Now, why would I think that the Catalan is such a dangerous system? Maybe in a way, it's very simple. It's because after white plays with bishop g2, short counts, most people don't have any idea how to continue. So what they do is that they say, okay, I'm going to take that pawn. And then when he counters and tries to take it back, I'm going to use the time. And I'm going to just push versus his d4, c5. Makes sense, right? I mean, it's a good-looking move. We are driving an attack over there. This is wrong. And now we're going to talk about the key mistake of why a lot of people end up in a terrible middle game, especially against strong players. It's called bad structure. What I mean by bad structure is that when you're starting out, actually, you need to be thinking about how your pawns and your pieces can get as much space or greater scope for activity that they can. If your pieces cannot do that for whatever reason, you will endure different type of trouble. Like, for example, imagine d takes the c, bishop takes the c, queen takes the c4, rook here, knight c3. I've had that type of position against a very strong master, and then like for instance, after that knight of the c3, c6, rook d1, things just so quickly end up terrible that you cannot imagine the speed with which we're just going to lose almost everything that we've been sort of fighting for. So I always believe that the key in getting the middle game right is to create the proper structure. But how do we do it when we don't know the theory? And if you know the theory, if you know the line, it's great. But there's always a possibility that there will be a line you don't know. So here are a couple of suggestions you could follow. First thing, make sure you come up with an outline. I can't stress enough how important an outline is. And what an outline basically suggests is that you come up with 3 to 4 move sequence of where you want to have your pieces go to. Why do you want to have them there? And what would they be doing? So what will be our goal? What will be our continuation here? Simple. D takes to the c4. Now the real deal is that after we continue with this move of d takes to the c4, in case white plays queen a4, now we'd like to develop, right? I mean, we'd like to find the ultimate way, the best way to act towards the opponent and get things right. How? Now, remember a big idea. Whenever you're playing any opening or middle game, I often say what you've got to do is to compare the different type of possibilities to one another and really decide or pick up the one that you think is more efficient. So, for example, in that specific situation, we could say that one of the ways to do it is to develop with knight c6, bishop d7, rook c8, and rook e8. It's a good outline. Interesting, at least. But then think about it. This whole outline that goes in there looks so ugly to me that I actually feel we're probably going to be losing because of it. It's so bad to think about this. See, it's passive. And here is the reason why I'd say that you need to think of a group of different, possibilities, possibly outlines, because having a group of possibilities is going to help you a lot. See, right now, what you do, you have to keep in mind is compare. Let's say knight c6, bishop b7, rook e8 may not work all that well as we were thinking about it. But maybe, what if we actually consider a different way of development? Maybe knight d7, b6, bishop b7. That will look a little bit better, I think. It would look like if we go this route, it will help us to eventually develop, quite nicely in this case. And then after that, you could concentrate with the move of, maybe c5, queen c6. Remember, the best way to go forward is to concentrate on the, a really big idea. And I call that focus on the opponent's threats. Now, some masters or books suggest think about the opponent's possibilities, but that's very wide in this case. Like actually, first, first thing out there is number one. Number one, look at the moves that can damage your opponent's, like your own position. Which moves are going to actually create a damage or a problem in this case? So this is really, really very important. So like actually that's quite valuable. After the move of queen to the a4, so what we could do is think of this b6, but then white can play with the move of knight to the e5. We could challenge against this. He can threaten against the rook on the a8. He can even come up with the move of knight to the c6. It's pretty dangerous in this type of position. So what else can we do? So first and foremost, you've got to remember that threats can come in pretty quickly. You just have to be really prepared and ready in this type of position. So it's a challenge. So that doesn't work. I want you to think of a different way on how we can make the development work. Let's see if anybody could suggest a different, more engaging way to do it. Anyone? Tell me. What could black do so that his development and the pieces could work? Anyone? Okay. c5, but that's not a developing move. We just talked about that. So if we play with the move of pawn up to the c5, it's going to be, he's going to probably exchange and open up in this case, and it doesn't feel like it's such a good idea. No. We need a different type of a move. So what we've got to do is a different kind of candidate. How else can we do that? See, the thing about that is, we need bishop d7 to c6 and knight d7. That's interesting. Again, let's think about what sort of problems can white place, or what this could cause as a problem. Same thing with c6. I really don't like the fact that c7 is going to be blockaded in this type of position, and so this is This is very, very important, actually. In this case, probably what white could do in this is probably to play with the move of bishop to the f4. He's going to challenge, I'm sorry, like he's going to challenge the c7 pawn. The bishop is not actually moving anywhere. And yeah, so like this is very important. So like a key thing that you want to remember is be very, very, very careful out there. So like don't want to play passive. Remember, biggest mistake of why 98% of the openings fail is due to passivity. You do not want to be passive. What else can we do? What other variation? Let's see if there's anything else. Excuse me. I've been having a little bit of a cold in the last few weeks. C6, B5. Let's think of that. Again, more even than what your opponent can do to you. You've got to ask yourself what potential problems or weaknesses this thing can create. So this is very, very valuable. I believe that, especially when white plays with the move of queen to the c2, he is going to have that chance to pressurize. And no, 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 no. We need a different approach. What kind of, what kind of an opportunity? I can't hear anything, one said. All right, if you can't hear a thing, just let me know so I'll switch the microphone. I've got two. Knight d7 be not very good. No, that doesn't work like that. Doesn't work. Doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. See, so key about this type of position is something else. You see, number one is just you've got to neutralize the opponent. And what's the best way to go forward? A6. See, pawns and pieces must work together. It sounds like a very simplistic thing, but this is what you would like to know. A6, the idea that after queen takes the c, we can play with the move of pawn to the b5 out there. And, that's what we're actually going for in this case. So this is a really good way. If white actually comes back with the queen on the c2, then we can think about the move of bishop to the c7. And then bishop b7, and then we can go ahead with the move of knight to the d7 out there. And, so for example, after continuing knight to the d2, knight b to the d7. So this is a really wonderful resource. What we can do is, number one, develop in a really perspective way, actually. So after that, in case of a3, and then we can have rook to the c8. We can play with the move of pawn up to the c5. I don't know. Maybe we could actually even continue with the move of c5 directly, d takes the c, and then this is a great way to go for it. Knight takes the c5. So this is just actually a powerful resource. One of the key things is, remember, stabilize, go forward, expand, and then when you do that, it's going to be wonderful. Just this is really, really terrific in this position. And yeah, just wonderful idea of a6 plus b5. It doesn't work easily, okay? It's not going to happen in one or two moves. You have to be very careful. And more important, step by step. Think about, okay, that possibility, what's the problem with it? This possibility, what's the problem with it? That alternative way of developing, what could be the problem with that? What can he do? Okay, it's a very interesting, idea to consider. And so this is this is really, really interesting. Okay, so let's take a look and see, going back to the earliest stage. So I mean, we could have played with the move of d takes the c, and just we could play d takes the c, queen a4, pawn up to the a6, and then in case white plays knight to the a5, then so this is really, really, really important. Actually, we can play him b5. Now, of course, he could put certain problems, but not too much. How do we develop in a messed up position? Keep it simple. So, like, For instance, in this case, you could consider playing a move of bishop to the b7, and we can have that chance to follow up with c5. It's great. So now let's discuss past the opening stage. I'm going to go with an opening line that I consider very interesting. This is called Dutch. Now, it's something that you're probably not that familiar with. If you are, that's okay. And okay, so g6, bishop to g7, here castles. We castle 2, play c4, d6, knight c3, c6, and queen c2. So there's going to be a question. Can you come up with the proper development and setup for black speeders out of this rather new, I suppose, position for you? So what do we do now? Right. Now what do we do? Did we play for e5? Do we play for d5? Continue. Okay. First and foremost, now the key thing when it comes to a set of development is obviously the advanced position. You cannot just go queen c7, knight d7 and say I'm okay with that. Simply because, well, you're not going to be okay with it. You want to have that opportunity to follow up, and then essentially you can continue with the move of, you see, so maybe queen c7, pawn up to the e5, and then we could have that chance to play with probably even a move pawn to the e4. It's going to be a great activity out there. And okay, so this is very interesting. See, so important possibility, expand queen c7, maybe if in case white plays with a move of pawn up to the b3, and for instance after that type of move, then we can have e5 in this position, d6 to the e, d6 to the e. It's an excellent variation out there. See, the space, again, it's all begins with the center, but then we could continue with the move of d6 3, d6 3, bishop a3, rook e8, and then essentially the idea is that if white plays rook to the d1, then we can have e4, and see, so that's a very, very valuable idea. So in fact, that is a good idea in this type of position. Just realizing after that, not after knight d4, knight to the d7, and e3, we can play with the move knight to the e5, and so that's very, so like it's a great activity. See, that's what you want. You don't need long opening books to figure out where you need to play, but see, what you would want to do is think of your own version of creating a structure that is both active and effective in this type of position. It's a good activity. It's really, really efficient, and in the end of the day, we just have all those all these resources available. Okay, so so this is quite good. Okay, now let's take a look. What I like to do is point out a few little things about that. Rule number 1. Think about the opponent. Again, what about him? Well, one thing that white could do is probably, let's say, play b3 instead. And then when we go with, or not b3, maybe you can play d5. So we don't have e5. What to do right now? Should black do at that moment? Anyone? Prophylactic moves, attacking moves, controlling squares, or space gaining. Space. You see, there are 3 things. You need to fast development, closer to the center, fight for the center, and space. Those are the 3 things. Okay. What do we do now? Very, very important question. Anyone? E5. Nevertheless, this is the very good candidate in that position. Really important to move because the moment we get to play with the move of pawn up to the e5, we're having the perfect possibility to advance quite quick. We're going to be able to, realize different type of threats out there. It is terrific. And so, for example, after continuing with the e5, d takes to the e, then there is the move of bishop takes to the e6. In case white plays queen to the d3, we can play a move like queen to the e7 in that moment. And so this is really interesting. So actually, after that move of knight to the a6, rook to the d8. So this is beautiful, actually. Number one, actually, is you want to still get enough freedom for your pieces to come up with. And well, it's a great way to go forward. See, so rule number one, do not allow yourselves to stay back. I mentioned it a couple of times, but I want to say it again because it's so big. And I'll look at what position we could really give our pieces in this case. So it's very, very important. And then after knight c5, we could continue with the move queen to the c2. And so then, then what we could continue with, so just the queen c2, rook a to the d8, rook d1, and rook fe8 in this moment. It's a really, really interesting idea. You can play king h8. And now the question is, how do we regroup the pieces from there? So what to do now? We strengthen our pieces so that they can be quite well and developed. Important. Knight ce4. No. No, 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 no. Remember, you have to start with the worst placed piece. That's what we need to begin with, always. What is the worst placed piece, actually? The worst placed piece is presently that bishop on e6. That's all we need to be thinking about. See? So, number one, you must take those pieces and just get them along the way. You see, so in fact, actually, what you have to do is just go gradually. Imagine a move like king to the h8 being played. And then after we have that type of a move, we can have that bishop g8, h6. And so this is a really, really powerful thing. One of the key things is number one, arrange those pieces on squares where they may not be as perfect or active, but where they're gonna have a good role, something that they could do in this type of position. And so this is really, really important. And so this is step by step. Now, when what can white do? Well, you see, his pieces may be okay. Unfortunately, they're not as perfect. They do not have any, I'd say, pressuring points, so they could be so useful. So what can we do in this type of position? Change on e4 or play with knight to the d7? Anyone? Should we exchange? A5 was okay, but not necessarily. You'll see why very shortly. So what can we do now? Knight e4, very, very good looking move. Or even knight b to the d7 may be played. So that's very important. You could actually That is a critical idea in this type of position. And you see, first and foremost, you've got to get your forces ready. Like, just don't open up too quickly. You don't have them as perfect. So step by step, you can come up with a move of knight to the e5. And actually, after the exchanging, then there's going to be the retake, and then it could be the move of pawn up to the e4 in this moment. So like after that, maybe what he could do is to play with, I don't know, queen d3. And now, are we going to play knight f? Yes, we are, because ultimately that feels very prepared. Every piece is good. Now let's talk about another mistake: committing. You see, every time when you commit to change the structure, you have to feel that this is really the best time to do it. Like, everything else is, like, solved. We've developed. We've already gotten what we wanted in terms of pieces, so we're ready. And we're not ready yet. So what we got to do is probably play this knight at the d7. In case of knight d2, okay, we can do knight e5. Step by step. That's the harmony you want. Now, in case you don't have that harmony, sometimes we're going to have a position. I'm going to show you a typical passive position. And that happens in the, let's suppose that the opponent plays something like the Maroczy. He sets us up. We take a6, knight c3, knight f6, say he plays a3. And we've got to play a position just like this. It is a passive position. We didn't want it. It just happens. And you see, so this is really interesting. What do we do in this moment? How to play it? Very good question. A huge query. When you have a position that is passive, you got to understand that it's not necessarily weak. The mistakes in such a situation could come by just staying behind, being a little bit more down in the back. We don't want to be in the back. We want to actually just, develop and stay a little bit better. So what's the right way to go forward in this moment? Very good question. I'd say that the key is that we just finish up. Maybe we can actually castle in this type of position. Castle, and let's develop. There are 3 stages that I consider most important in chess, maybe even bishop to the d7. First is always the development. Then the next one is after we complete the development, we could be thinking a bit more about improving. That means coordinating our pieces and getting everything well. And then actually, after that's done, after we play with the move of bishop to the d7, I believe it's going to be a great moment for us to play rook to the c8, queen d2, and queen e5. See, little by little, we arrange and give our pieces what they need, and that is a good coordination. That means they're close to each other, they're helping one another, and we are ready. Now, you may be asking, okay, ready for what? Am I going to be attacking in this position? Am I going to be thinking about some threats? Not at all. The rushing is the worst problem. Do not rush. Okay? Do not rush. I'm going to say it again. That's very valuable. Taking the time to really build your position is a lot more important than rushing. And what that means is that you guarantee each piece as best, the best position possible. It's not going to be very easy, but that's what we're looking for. So step by step, things are good. And so let's take a look and see what happens next. I can do eventually a move of bishop f1. So how do you find a significant plan? Now, most people know that the best way to plan in the middle game is to find a target and go against it. That's totally fake. Because unless the opponent has already messed up, which doesn't happen so early in the game, you can't find a target. So I'm going to tell you one thing. Just keep getting your pieces better. That means centralize them, find out better positions, and actually, after we do it this way, we have the opportunity to advance and attack against the opponent And for instance, if in case white plays knight b3, and then actually we can do a move like queen to the c7. And then after continuing with this type of move, queen c7, we could have a nice pressure over to c4. If he comes back, you can even have a move of bishop to the a4 take place. It is excellent. So like for example, that's very, very important thing. A key concept in this type of position is just to get better and strengthen. White will play with move of rook to the c1, c3, and what to do next. Very interesting query. What do we do now? I mean, one possibility is that we get to attack, but how? c4 isn't possible to threaten. It doesn't look like it. But we need to do something, obviously, about that. Anyone? Would you guys have any suggestion on what white black should do? I mean, we've already improved the pieces in our way. We've taken them to much better positions. But what to do next? Great question. See, I'm going to give you a little idea, that you must remember. And most important thing, okay, is first and foremost, slowly regroup. But how? What to regroup? Well, find out what are the problems of the position in this case. See, this is a great thing. So, just the major problem, obviously, is that we have that rook passive, that bishop is quite passive and everything. And then after that, we can have a move of pawn up to the d5. Okay, so this is very, very important. So, what to do right now? Bring him back. Queen goes back. I'm totally against backward moves, but we have to escape from the danger of the white rook. So, okay, and then after continuing with this type of a position, then what we could do, concentrate on, is in case of rook c1, we could go for a move of pawn up to the d5. And it is really, really good. The number one thing is always focus your attention at opening the position, because just having some of your pieces nice is not going to be enough. So in case of the take, there is the recapture takes. Look at how good this will sound. In a few moves, we open it. In all those positions, you realize trouble begins when you get passive. But also, it's when you don't have a plan, or at least you don't have a goal or direction of where you want to have your pieces. So, step by step, we can make this work in a better way. All right, these are just basically some of the suggestions that I wanted to give you. If you care to check the link below this video, you're gonna find the amazing course of a grandmaster. She's an incredible grandmaster. She's an incredible trainer. I've talked to her. So essentially, she's giving all these little nuances as to how you can avoid mistakes and what practical methods could possibly lead you to covering the mastery. Don't forget to check it. It's only available for a few hours. So it's an incredible method course. And yeah, just check it out, and I'll speak to you next weekend.